additionally, additionally. Again, again. Also, also. And. As well as, as well as. At the same time, at the same time. Besides, besides. Further, further. Furthermore, furthermore. In addition, in addition. Indeed, indeed. Likewise, likewise. Moreover, moreover. Next, next. Or. Similarly, similarly. Together with, together with. What's more, what's more. According to, according to. In agreement, in agreement. After, after. Although, although. Despite, despite. In spite of, in spite of. Nevertheless, nevertheless. Nonetheless, nonetheless. Notwithstanding, notwithstanding. For all that, for all that. At the same time, at the same time. But. Conversely, conversely. Even though, even though. However, however. In contrast, in contrast. On the contrary, on the contrary. On the other hand, on the other hand. Still, still. Though, though. Unlike, unlike. Whereas, whereas. While, while. Yet, yet. Comparing, comparing. Likewise, likewise. In comparison, in comparison. In the same way, in the same way. Similarly, similarly. Definitely, definitely. In any event, in any event. Indeed, indeed. In a special, in a special. In fact, in fact. In particular, in particular. Naturally, naturally. Particularly, particularly. Principally, principally. Specifically, specifically. Unquestionably, unquestionably. Undoubtedly, undoubtedly. Without a doubt, without a doubt. After a while, after a while. Afterward, afterward. As time goes by, as time goes by. At last, at last. At present, at present. At this point, at this point. At the same time, at the same time. During, during. Immediately, immediately. In the meantime, in the meantime. Lately, lately. Later, later. Meanwhile, meanwhile. Now, now. Nowadays, nowadays. Presently, presently. Shortly, shortly. Simultaneously, simultaneously. Since, since. Soon, soon. Temporarily, temporarily. Then, then. Until, until. Up until now, up until now. While, while. Yet, yet. first, first. Second, second. Third, third. Then, then. Next, next. Later, later. After that, after that. Finally, finally. As, as. Because, because. Due to, due to. For, for. In order that, in order that. Now that, now that. Since, since. So, so. That is because, that is because. That is why, that is why. Accordingly, accordingly. As a consequence, as a consequence. As a result, as a result. Consequently, consequently. For this reason, for this reason. Hence, hence. In short, in short. In consequence, in consequence. Then, then. Thereby, thereby. Therefore, therefore. Thus, thus. From the viewpoint of, from the viewpoint of. In my opinion, in my opinion. In the midst of, in the midst of. As long as, as long as. Even if, even if. If, if. If not, if not. In case of, in case of. In case, in case. In the event of, in the event of. In the event, in the event. Only if, only if. Provided, provided. Providing, providing. Suppose, suppose. Whether or not, whether or not. Otherwise, otherwise. Apart from, apart from. Aside from, aside from. But. Except for, except for. Unless, unless. For example, for example. To illustrate, to illustrate. For instance, for instance. In another case, in another case. Including, including. In particular, in particular. In this case, in this case. In this manner, in this manner. Namely, namely. That is, that is. Such as, such as. For this reason, for this reason. In an effort to, in an effort to. In order to, in order to. To the purpose of, to the purpose of. To this end, to this end. With this purpose, with this purpose. In place of, in place of. Instead of, instead of. Or. Rather, rather. In other words, in other words. In short, in short. More simply, more simply. Namely, namely. Rather, rather. So to speak, so to speak. That is, that is. That is to say, that is to say. At, first, at, first. By the way, by the way. Concerning, concerning. First of all, first of all. In the first place, in the first place. Initially, initially. On the one hand, on the one hand. Regarding, regarding. Speaking of, speaking of. To begin with, to begin with. To start with, to start with. At the same time, at the same time. By, by. By means of, by means of. This way, this way. Through, through. Certainly, evidently, certainly, evidently. Doubtlessly, doubtlessly. Indeed, indeed. Naturally, naturally. Needless to say, needless to say. Not to mention, not to mention. Obviously, obviously. Of course, of course. Undoubtedly, undoubtedly. Without question, without question, without a doubt, without a doubt. After all, at last, at last. Briefly, briefly, finally, finally. In brief, in brief. In conclusion, in conclusion. In short, in short. In summary, in summary. Lest, lest. On the whole, on the whole. To conclude, to conclude. To sum up, to sum up.